So to take a break from the manifestos, we're going to focus on somebody who believes you should back the ex-Tory MPs, now because they've lost their whips and were expelled from the party and now independent MPs, of David Gauke, Dominic Grieve and Anne Milton, all of whom ardent Remainers, all being supported by former Conservative Prime Minister Sir John Major. The reason for this is because they voted against Boris's deal and they should be supported, yo. Now, it should be stated, Boris Johnson's deal was not great. There were improvements on it compared to that of Theresa May's, yes. And there was an idea in place to tackle the border between Ireland and Northern Ireland, which involved a form, which apparently was too much to ask. Massive oversimplification, I'm very much aware, but I thought I'd throw it in because reasons. These MPs in question most of you should have heard of. David Gauke, because a man was recently released from prison who shouldn't have been and went on a rampage on London Bridge. Yes, that was absolutely delightful. He was, after all, the Justice Secretary and many aim it at him. Dominic Grieve, an ardent Remoaner who is doing everything he can as the former Attorney General to try and get us to stay in the EU. He is doing everything he can to make sure of it. And Anne Milton is no exception to this. They are doing everything they can to go against the will of the people under the guise of doing everything in the national interest. Because we didn't vote to be poorer, and that's a good enough reason, right? No. We voted leave, so I highly recommend you get on with, well, not now, I guess you aren't actually in job, but those who are, please get on with it. Although on the 12th we'll find out if we have a new government, or whether it will be Boris Johnson's government, whether it will be hung, or whether it will have a majority. This could be very interesting. Sir John Major's mentality and thought process with regards to those MPs was that this was tribal loyalties that had been loosened by Brexit. I tend to agree, because the majority of MPs want to remain, but because of their parties, and some having to honour the will of the people, which they don't like, they're having to do everything they can to ensure that we stay in it. Their version of leave is to stay in the single market, customs union, common fisheries policy, common agricultural policy, and everything else you can possibly think of, all of which are aspects of remaining members of the EU. That does not mean leave. People say there is a nuance here. No, there really isn't. Leave. If you can get a deal, good on you. If you can't, though, sayonara. The Conservatives say they'll get us out of the EU by January, if they win a parliamentary majority. They believe this will honour the result of the 2016 referendum in which 52% of people backed leave. Back in September, 21 MPs were expelled from the Parliamentary Conservative Party after they had voted against the possibility of the Prime Minister pursuing a no-deal exit from the EU. Now 10 MPs have been allowed back in. One who was not has since now resigned entirely. He is no longer a politician. That would be Kenneth Clarke, who did back Boris Johnson's deal. He backed any version of a deal because he wanted a deal. With the seats that David Gauke, Dominic Grieve and Anne Milton hold, they are Conservative strongholds. They are going to lose because it is not the individual they vote for in those areas. It is the party and the policies they support. It is why those people who were once Labour or Conservative that then defected to the Liberal Democrats are more than likely going to lose their seats. Because they are only joining the Liberal Democrats not because they are liberal, but because of a one-dimensional policy and the only one they can get behind. People say Jo Swinson is a threat. Well, after watching her get absolutely flayed in a recent televised interview, even though she did better than Jeremy Corbyn, I'd be hard-pressed to think for a second she's going to make any gains with her strategy of attacking Conservative strongholds in London with the help of people like that actor Hugh Grant, who got absolutely demolished because he's a Labour person when he was accosted by a lot of people asking him about how the party has failed to tackle anti-Semitism. In a video message, Sir John Major described Brexit as the worst foreign policy decision of his lifetime. He called David Gauke, Dominic Grieve and Anne Milton principled, decent human beings, and that none of them has left the Conservative Party and the Conservative Party has left them. Without such talents on its benches, Parliament will be the poorer, which is why if I were resident in any of those constituencies, they would have my vote. Understandably, Boris Johnson has disagreed with his illustrious predecessor, with him believing and saying, I think it's very sad and I think that he is wrong, and I think that he represents a view that is outdated. Alas greatly that I respect him and his record, and I think that what we need to do now is honour the will of the people and get Brexit done. I like that he called him illustrious and greatly respected the guy, the very first one by the way, who started forfeiting our powers to the EU. How very principled. Give up our strong hand because we're, throwing them a bone or showing a sign of good faith, which totally worked out for us, didn't it? Boris Johnson believes that the Conservative government, if he gets a majority, will be able to reach a post-Brexit trade deal with the EU by the end of 2020, which is a tall ask for anyone, especially when you consider it took 7 years to negotiate a deal with Canada and many years to negotiate any deal anywhere else either. But for us to do it in 1 year would take quite a lot of hard work. Might I recommend a complete lack of holidays? That might be an idea.